You think you can take me? Come on, show me! This isn't a demo anymore. This is real. No rules, no mercy. Let's go!
At 1964, Long Beach, a packed arena, hundreds of eyes, watching, waiting, but not really expecting anything unforgettable. For most people sitting there that day, it was just another martial arts event. Demonstrations, techniques, maybe a few impressive moves. And then everyone goes home, nothing shocking, nothing historic. At least, that's what they believed. But then, everything changed. A young man stepped forward, dressed in simple black. No flashy entrance, no loud introduction, just quiet, controlled presence. That man was Bruce Lee. At first glance, he didn't look intimidating. He wasn't the biggest guy in the room. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. But there was something about him. Something that made people stop talking. Something that made the air feel heavier. Bruce Lee stood in the center, calm, focused, almost too relaxed. And then he said something that no one expected. Something that instantly shifted the entire energy of the arena. He challenged the crowd, not a specific fighter, not a trained martial artist, a volunteer. Anyone. For a moment, people thought he was joking. A few chuckles echoed in the audience, because this wasn't how demonstrations worked. You don't just call out random people. You don't risk unpredictability. You don't hand control over to chance. But Bruce Lee wasn't smiling. He was serious, dead serious. And now, the room was quiet, uncomfortably quiet. People looked at each other, some amused, some confused, some slightly nervous, because suddenly this wasn't just a demonstration anymore. This felt real, very real. A few seconds passed. No one moved. No one wanted to be the first, because deep down, everyone felt it. This man wasn't ordinary. There was something different about him, something dangerous. But then, one man stood up, not a professional fighter, not a master, just an ordinary guy. He walked forward slowly. You could see it in his body language. Hesitation, uncertainty, but also a little bit of pride. Maybe he thought this would be easy. Maybe he thought it was just a harmless demonstration. Or maybe he didn't fully understand what he just stepped into. The crowd started whispering. All eyes locked onto the two men now standing face to face. Bruce Lee. Calm, still, almost emotionless, and the volunteer, tense, slightly stiff, trying to look confident, but failing to hide the nerves. This exact moment, this face-off, was something no one in that arena would ever forget, because what was about to happen next would completely shock everyone watching. Bruce Lee didn't take a fighting stance immediately. He didn't rush. He didn't show aggression. Instead, he simply observed, studying the man in front of him. Every movement, every breath, every tiny shift in posture, it was almost as if the fight had already started without anyone realizing it. The volunteer adjusted his stance, trying to prepare, trying to look ready, but something felt off. Bruce Lee wasn't reacting the way a normal fighter would. No bouncing, no circling, no wasted motion, just stillness. And that stillness was terrifying. A few people in the crowd leaned forward, sensing something unusual, something different. This wasn't a performance anymore. This was something else, something raw, something unpredictable. Bruce Lee finally raised his hands, but not in a traditional guard. It was loose, relaxed, almost casual, and yet there was precision in it, control, intent, the kind of control that doesn't come from practice alone, but from complete mastery. The volunteer swallowed. You could see it, that tiny moment of doubt, that flicker of realization. He might have made a mistake, a big one, but now it was too late. There was no backing out. The crowd held its breath, the arena completely silent. And then Bruce Lee moved, not fast, not slow, but perfectly timed. And in that single moment, everything changed, because what happened next was something no one there was prepared to witness. Not the audience, not the volunteer, no one. And that was just the beginning. The moment Bruce Lee moved, most people didn't even realize it happened. There was no dramatic wind-up, no exaggerated motion, no warning, just a sudden shift. And in that split second, everything changed. The volunteer flinched, not because he saw the attack clearly, but because he felt it. That's what confused everyone watching from the audience's perspective. It didn't look like a full strike. It didn't look powerful. It didn't look dangerous. And yet, the man standing in front of Bruce Lee had already lost control of the situation. You could see it instantly. His posture broke. His confidence cracked. That tiny moment of hesitation. That was all Bruce Lee needed, because unlike traditional fighters, Bruce Lee wasn't reacting. He was anticipating, reading, calculating. Every move the volunteer hadn't even made yet. The crowd leaned in, trying to understand what they just witnessed. Some thought they missed it. Others assumed it was just a quick test. But a few people, the ones who understood fighting even a little, they knew something unusual was happening. Something dangerous. The volunteer tried to reset. He stepped back slightly, adjusted his stance, tried to regain composure. But there was a problem now, a big one. Bruce Lee hadn't changed, not even a little. Still calm, still relaxed, still completely in control. And that contrast, it was terrifying, because the more nervous the volunteer became, the calmer Bruce Lee looked. It didn't make sense. It didn't feel fair. And deep down, the volunteer realized it. This wasn't a normal match. This wasn't a demonstration. This was a lesson. And he had just become part of it. The crowd started whispering again, but this time, it wasn't casual, it wasn't relaxed. There was tension in the air now, real tension, because everyone could feel it building. The volunteer made his move, finally, a quick step forward, a basic attack, nothing too advanced, just something to test the distance, to test Bruce Lee. But the moment he committed, Bruce Lee was already ahead. By the time the volunteer's strike was halfway through, Bruce Lee had already responded, not with force, not with aggression, but with precision, a small movement, almost invisible, and suddenly the attack was gone, neutralized, like it never existed. The crowd reacted this time, a few gasps, some confused murmurs, because now it was obvious this wasn't normal speed, this wasn't normal timing. This was something else, something they weren't used to seeing. The volunteer froze for a split second, and that was his biggest mistake. Because in fighting, hesitation is everything, and Bruce Lee exploited it instantly. A sharp step forward, closing distance, not giving space, not giving time, not giving anything. The volunteer tried to react, but it was too late. He was already behind. And Bruce Lee? He was still calm, still controlled, still operating at a level the other man couldn't even understand. The gap between them, it was growing with every second, and the crowd could see it now, clear as day. This wasn't a fair fight. This was dominance, pure, effortless dominance. The volunteer's breathing got heavier, his movements less precise, his confidence fading, and Bruce Lee unchanged like a machine. No wasted energy, no panic, no rush, just perfect timing. Again and again. The volunteer attempted another move, faster this time, more desperate. But desperation doesn't create skill, it creates mistakes. And Bruce Lee, he was waiting for exactly that. The instant the opening appeared, he took it. Clean, direct, undeniable. The crowd gasped louder this time, because now they finally understood. This wasn't just skill, this was mastery on another level, a level they had never seen before. The volunteer stumbled slightly, not knocked out, not injured, but mentally shaken, completely shaken, because for the first time, he realized the truth. He wasn't fighting Bruce Lee, he was trying to survive him. And that realization, it changed everything. The energy, the tension, the entire atmosphere of the arena. This was no longer entertainment. This was something unforgettable, something people would talk about for years. But the most shocking part, Bruce Lee still wasn't going all out, not even close. And that raised a terrifying question. If this was him holding back, then what would happen if he didn't? The answer was about to leave the entire arena speechless. By now, the entire arena understood one thing. This was no ordinary demonstration. This was something else, something they had never seen before. And at the center of it all was Bruce Lee, standing calm, relaxed, like nothing unusual was happening. But the man in front of him, the volunteer, he was no longer the same person who stepped forward minutes ago. His confidence was gone, completely gone. You could see it in his eyes, in his breathing, in the way his body moved now, stiff, unsure, reactive, because he had realized something terrifying. He couldn't keep up, not even close. The gap between them wasn't just skill, it was something deeper, something almost impossible to understand. And then Bruce Lee decided to change the pace. Up until now, he had been controlled, measured, almost patient. But in the next moment, everything shifted. He moved again, this time faster. So fast that most of the audience didn't even register what they saw. It wasn't a blur, it was worse than that. It was absence, like the movement skipped reality itself. The volunteer reacted late. Again, his hands came up. But they weren't protecting him. They were guessing, trying to catch something that had already happened. Bruce Lee stepped in, close, too close, breaking distance instantly, no warning, no hesitation, and suddenly, the volunteer was overwhelmed, not by power, but by speed, pure, overwhelming speed. Each movement from Bruce Lee came with precision, no wasted energy, no extra motion, just direct, efficient action, the kind of movement that doesn't look flashy, but is impossible to stop. The crowd gasped loudly now, no more whispers, no more confusion. People were leaning forward, eyes wide, trying to process what they were witnessing, because this didn't look like traditional martial arts anymore. There were no big swings, no dramatic techniques, no pauses, just flow, relentless, unstoppable flow. The volunteer tried to step back, create distance, but Bruce Lee didn't allow it. Every time space opened, he closed it. Instantly, like he was always one step ahead. No, you're not one step, 10 steps. The volunteer attempted another attack, faster, more aggressive, almost desperate, but desperation makes timing worse, not better. And Bruce Lee, his timing was perfect, always perfect. Before the attack could fully form, Bruce Lee intercepted it, clean, sharp, effortless. The crowd reacted even louder this time, because now it was undeniable. This wasn't just skill, this was dominance on a completely different level. A level no one there had ever experienced. The volunteer stumbled again, this time more visibly, his balance slightly off, his rhythm completely broken. And that's when it hit him. A realization so heavy it showed on his face instantly. He wasn't in control anymore, not even a little. He was reacting, guessing, surviving. While Bruce Lee, he was dictating everything, every movement, every moment, every second of this encounter. The pressure kept building, not physically, but mentally. And mental pressure breaks people faster than anything else. The volunteer's reaction slowed just slightly, but against someone like Bruce Lee, slightly is everything. That tiny delay, that microscopic hesitation, Bruce Lee saw it, and he acted. A sudden burst forward, explosive, precise, unavoidable. The kind of movement that doesn't give you time to think, only time to realize you're already too late. The crowd erupted. Some people stood up. Others couldn't believe what they were seeing. Because now, it wasn't just impressive, it was shocking. Completely shocking. The volunteer froze again, and this time he knew, he truly knew, there was nothing he could do, nothing he could try, no adjustment, no strategy, nothing would work, because he wasn't just facing a better fighter, he was facing something else entirely, something beyond what he understood. And Bruce Lee, still calm, still focused, still in complete control, like this was just another moment, another demonstration, another lesson. But for the man standing in front of him, this was overwhelming, this was humbling, this was reality hitting all at once. And the worst part, it wasn't over, not even close, because Bruce Lee was about to take things even further. And what happened next would completely break whatever confidence the volunteer had left and leave the entire arena in absolute disbelief. By this point, the fight wasn't really a fight anymore. Everyone in the arena could feel it. The balance was gone. Completely gone. What started as a simple challenge had turned into something far more intense, far more one-sided. The volunteer stood there trying to hold himself together, but it was obvious now his confidence had shattered, not slowly, not gradually, but completely, because every move he made, every attempt he tried, had already been solved by Bruce Lee before it even began. That's what made it so overwhelming. It wasn't just that he was losing, it was how he was losing. He couldn't land anything, couldn't create space, couldn't even think clearly anymore, because Bruce Lee wasn't just faster, he was ahead, always ahead. The volunteer took a deep breath, trying to reset, trying to calm his mind, trying to find something, anything, that could change the situation. But when he looked at Bruce Lee again, that same calm expression was still there, unchanged, unbothered, almost effortless. And that made it worse, because it meant one thing. Bruce Lee still wasn't trying, not fully, not even close. The crowd had gone completely silent now. No whispers, no chatter, just pure focus. Every single person watching knew they were witnessing something rare, something they would remember for the rest of their lives. The volunteer made one last attempt. You could see it in his body. This wasn't just another move, this was everything he had left. He stepped forward aggressively, faster than before, more committed, more desperate, throwing everything into a single moment. But the problem was, Bruce Lee had already seen it before it even happened. The instant the movement began, Bruce Lee reacted, not with panic, not with force, but with perfect timing, a clean shift, a precise counter, and just like that, the attack disappeared, completely neutralized again. But this time, something different happened. Bruce Lee didn't reset, he didn't step back, he didn't give space. He stayed right there, close, controlling the distance, controlling the moment, controlling everything. The volunteer froze, just for a second, but that second was everything, because Bruce Lee moved instantly, a sharp, direct action, fast, precise, undeniable, and in that moment, the volunteer broke. Not physically, but mentally. You could see it clearly. His body language changed, his posture dropped, his eyes shifted. That confidence he walked in with, gone, completely gone. The realization had fully set in now. He couldn't win, he couldn't compete, he couldn't even keep up. And Bruce Lee, still calm, still composed, still completely in control, like none of this required effort, like this was just natural. The crowd reacted louder than ever, gasps, shock, disbelief, because now it wasn't just impressive, it was undeniable. There was a clear difference here, a level gap so massive, it almost didn't feel real. Some people stood up from their seats, others stared in silence, trying to process what they were seeing, because this wasn't how demonstrations usually went. This wasn't controlled, this wasn't predictable, this was raw, unfiltered, and completely real. The volunteer stepped back slightly, not as a tactic, but instinct. His body trying to escape the pressure, trying to create distance, trying to breathe. But even that didn't help, because Bruce Lee didn't chase wildly, he didn't rush forward, he simply adjusted, maintained control, stayed within range, like a shadow you couldn't escape. And that was the most terrifying part. There was no opening, no moment to recover, no chance to reset, just constant pressure, constant awareness, constant control. The volunteer looked overwhelmed now, completely overwhelmed. And for the first time, it wasn't just the audience who realized it. He did too, fully, deeply. There was no coming back from this, no sudden turnaround, no miracle moment. This was over. But Bruce Lee, he wasn't finished yet, not completely, because what he was about to do next would turn this from an impressive display into something unforgettable, something people would talk about for decades. And in that moment, everyone in the arena felt it. Something bigger was coming, something final, something that would define this entire event. And when it happened, there would be no doubt left, none at all. By now, there was no doubt left, not in the crowd, not in the arena, and definitely not in the mind of the volunteer standing in front of Bruce Lee. This was over. Everyone could feel it, but no one knew how it would end. And that was the most intense part. The silence inside the arena became heavy, almost suffocating. Hundreds of people watching, but no one speaking, no one moving, because they all sensed it. The final moment was coming. Bruce Lee stood there, exactly the same, calm, relaxed, in control, like nothing had changed. But everything had, because now it wasn't about proving anything. That part was already done. Now it was about finishing it. The volunteer took a small step, not forward, not backward, just uncertain. Like his body didn't know what to do anymore. His mind was overloaded. Too many failed attempts, too many moments of being completely outclassed. And standing in front of him was a man who hadn't even broken a sweat. Bruce Lee shifted slightly, just enough, just a small adjustment. But this time, it felt different. The energy changed, sharpened, focused, like everything up until now was leading to this one moment. The volunteer hesitated again, and that hesitation was the end, because Bruce Lee didn't wait. He moved, fast, cleaner than before, more direct than ever. No wasted motion, no extra movement, just pure execution. And in that split second, it happened. A perfectly timed strike, controlled, precise, but undeniable. The kind of movement that doesn't just land, it ends the moment. The volunteer reacted, but too late, way too late. His body froze for a fraction of a second, and that was enough, because against Bruce Lee, a fraction of a second might as well be forever. The impact wasn't wild, it wasn't chaotic. It was controlled, measured, almost surgical, but the effect? Instant. The volunteer stumbled back, not violently, but clearly shaken, completely overwhelmed. And just like that, it was over. No dramatic knockout, no unnecessary damage, just pure dominance, absolute control. And a finish that left no doubt. For a moment, no one reacted. The entire arena froze, like everyone needed a second to process what they just witnessed, because it didn't feel real. It didn't look like what they expected. It was too fast, too clean, too perfect. And then the reaction came, loud, explosive, uncontrolled. People stood up. Gasps turned into cheers. Shock turned into disbelief, because they had just witnessed something different. Something beyond a normal demonstration. This wasn't just skill, this was mastery. The volunteer stood there, catching his breath, still trying to understand what just happened, because deep down, he knew. There was nothing he could have done, nothing at all. And Bruce Lee. He didn't celebrate, didn't react, didn't show emotion. He simply stepped back, relaxed again, like the entire moment was just another demonstration, but the crowd knew better. They had seen it, felt it, experienced it. This wasn't normal, this wasn't common, this was rare. And in that moment, Bruce Lee didn't just win a demonstration, he changed the way people understood fighting forever. But what most people didn't realize was at this moment was just the beginning, because after this, everything would change for Bruce Lee, for martial arts, and for the world watching. And the story behind how this moment came to be was just as powerful as what they had just seen, because Bruce Lee wasn't born like this. He became this. And what it took to reach this level was something very few people could truly understand. That story is where things get even more interesting. What people witnessed that day in Long Beach, it looked unreal, almost impossible. But that level of control, that speed, that precision, it didn't happen by accident. Bruce Lee wasn't born like that. He built it, piece by piece, through struggle, through frustration, through a mindset that refused to accept limits. Long before that moment in 1964, Bruce Lee was just a young man trying to understand one thing: why traditional martial arts felt incomplete. He trained hard, harder than most. He followed the rules, learned the forms, practiced the techniques exactly as they were taught. But something didn't sit right with him. Something felt restricted, too rigid, too predictable, because in real situations, fights weren't clean, they weren't structured, they weren't controlled, they were chaotic, unpredictable, and fast, very fast. Bruce Lee realized something early that most people didn't. If you rely only on tradition, you become limited, and Bruce Lee hated limits, so he started questioning everything, not out of disrespect, but out of curiosity. Why move this way? Why not faster? Why not simpler? Why not more direct? Those questions changed everything, because instead of following one style, Bruce Lee began breaking them apart, taking what worked, discarding what didn't, building something new, something efficient, something real. While others practiced routines, Bruce Lee trained reactions, while others focused on form. Bruce Lee focused on function. He didn't care how something looked, he cared if it worked. That mindset made him different, but it also made his journey harder, because when you go against tradition, you face resistance, criticism, doubt. People didn't understand what he was doing. Some thought he was wrong. Others thought he was disrespecting martial arts, but Bruce Lee didn't stop, because he wasn't trying to fit in, he was trying to evolve. He trained obsessively, not just physically, but mentally, studying movement, timing, distance, speed, even outside martial arts, boxing, fencing, philosophy, anything that could give him an edge, anything that could make him better, faster, sharper, more efficient. He turned his body into a weapon, but more importantly, he turned his mind into one, because real fighting isn't just physical, it's mental. And Bruce Lee mastered both. He believed in simplicity, directness, no wasted motion, no unnecessary techniques, just pure, effective movement. That's why in Long Beach, his actions looked so different, so effortless, so ahead of everything else, because while others were following systems, Bruce Lee had created his own understanding, a deeper one, a more advanced one, and that's what the crowd felt that day. Even if they couldn't explain it, they saw something new, something unfamiliar, something powerful. But behind that moment were years of discipline, years of questioning, years of pushing beyond what others thought was possible. Bruce Lee didn't just train to be better than others, he trained to be better than himself every single day. And that mindset, that obsession with growth, that's what created the man they saw in that arena, a man who didn't rely on tradition alone, a man who adapted, who evolved, who refused to stay limited. And because of that, he became something rare, something unforgettable. But what most people don't realize is this: the Long Beach moment, that wasn't the peak. that wasn't the end. That was just the moment the world finally noticed. Because after that day, Bruce Lee's journey didn't slow down, it exploded, and what came next would turn him from a skilled martial artist into a global legend. But that transformation came with its own challenges, its own struggles, and its own defining moments, because becoming different is one thing, but changing the world, that's something else entirely. And Bruce Lee was about to do exactly that. After that moment in 1964, things changed. Not instantly, not overnight, but something had shifted. The people who witnessed that demonstration, they didn't forget it. They talked about it again and again, about the speed, the control, the way Bruce Lee made it all look so effortless. And slowly, his name started spreading. But here's the truth. Most people don't know. Even after that performance, Bruce Lee's journey wasn't easy. In fact, it became even harder. Because being different comes with a price. When Bruce Lee moved to America, he had a vision, not just to teach martial art, but to change how people saw them. He wanted to break barriers, challenge old ideas, show that martial arts weren't about rigid styles, but about freedom, expression, efficiency. But not everyone was ready for that. Hollywood didn't accept him easily. Producers didn't see him as a leading man. Studios didn't believe audiences would connect with him. They underestimated him, saw him as too different, too unconventional, too ahead of his time. And that rejection, it hit hard, because Bruce Lee knew what he was capable of. He knew what he could bring to the screen, but opportunities, they were limited. So instead of waiting, he created his own path. He started teaching, sharing his philosophy, building a reputation, not just as a fighter, but as a thinker, a teacher, a visionary. His students weren't just beginners. They included actors, athletes, people who recognized that what Bruce Lee had was rare, something unique, something powerful. And through teaching, his ideas spread even further. His philosophy became clearer. Simplify, adapt, be formless, be like water. That mindset wasn't just about fighting, it was about life. And that's what made Bruce Lee different from everyone else. He wasn't just showing techniques, he was changing perspectives, changing how people thought, how they moved, how they approached challenges. And slowly, very slowly, the world started noticing. Opportunities began to open, small at first, then bigger, then impossible to ignore. Bruce Lee didn't just enter the film industry, he disrupted it. His movements on screen, different, faster, more real, more intense. Audiences had never seen anything like it before. And just like that moment in Long Beach, people were shocked again, but this time on a global scale. Movies featuring Bruce Lee exploded in popularity. His presence was magnetic, his energy undeniable. And suddenly, the same industry that doubted him couldn't ignore him anymore. He became a star, but not just a movie star, something bigger, a symbol of discipline, of breaking limits, of redefining what's possible. But behind all that success, the same mindset remained. Bruce Lee never stopped improving, never stopped questioning, never stopped evolving, because for him, there was no final level, no finish line, only growth, only progress. And that's what connected everything. The struggle, the rejection, the breakthrough, all of it led back to one thing. That moment in Long Beach, because that wasn't just a demonstration. It was a glimpse, a preview of what was coming, of what Bruce Lee would become. And the world, it wasn't ready, but it didn't matter, because Bruce Lee wasn't here to follow expectations. He was here to change them. And that's exactly what he did. But every legend has a legacy. And Bruce Lee's legacy didn't just stay in martial arts. It spread across the world, across generations, across time. And even today, people still talk about him. still study him, still try to understand how one man could move the way he did, think the way he did, and impact the world the way he did. And it all goes back to moments like that day in 1964, a simple challenge, a random volunteer, and a performance that shocked everyone, but more importantly, changed everything. Some moments, they don't just end when they're over, they stay, they echo, they grow bigger with time. What happened in Long Beach in 1964? It wasn't just a demonstration, it wasn't just a challenge, it was a statement. A moment where something new was revealed to the world, something different, something ahead of its time. Bruce Lee didn't just face a volunteer that day, he faced an idea. The idea that martial arts had to look a certain way, move a certain way, stay within certain limits, and in just a few minutes, he shattered that idea completely. But what makes this moment truly powerful is not just what people saw, it's what they felt. Because even those who didn't understand fighting, they understood one thing. They had just witnessed something special, something rare. And moments like that, they don't fade. They turn into stories. Stories turn into inspiration, and inspiration turns into legacy. Bruce Lee's legacy didn't come from just one fight or one performance. It came from what he represented: growth, evolution, freedom, the courage to question everything, and the discipline to build something better. Even today, decades later, people still study that moment, still analyze it, still try to understand how he moved the way he did, how he stayed so calm under pressure, how he made something so complex look so simple. And maybe that's the answer: simplicity. Bruce Lee didn't try to complicate things. He removed what wasn't necessary, focused on what worked, and trusted it completely. That's why his movements felt different, because they were real, direct, honest. And that honesty is what people connected with, not just in martial arts, but in life, because everyone faces challenges, everyone faces moments of pressure, moments of doubt, moments where things feel overwhelming. And in those moments, on what Bruce Lee showed that day, still applies. Stay calm, stay aware, adapt, don't freeze, don't hesitate, move with purpose, think clearly, and most importantly, don't limit yourself. Because limits are often just beliefs, and beliefs can be broken, just like they were in that arena. That day wasn't just about a volunteer losing. It wasn't about dominance. It wasn't about proving someone wrong. It was about showing what's possible. When skill meets mindset, when discipline meets vision, when someone refuses to stay ordinary. And that's why that moment still matters. That's why people still talk about it, still watch it, still feel it, because it reminds us of something important. Greatness doesn't happen by chance. It's built step by step, day by day, through effort, through failure, through persistence. Bruce Lee didn't become legendary overnight. He became legendary because he never stopped evolving, and that's the real lesson, not just from Long Beach, but from his entire life. So the next time you watch that moment, don't just see the speed, don't just see the skill, see the journey behind it, the mindset behind it, the discipline behind it, because that's where the real power is. And maybe that's what shocked everyone the most. Not just what Bruce Lee did, but what it showed the world, that limits can be broken, that new paths can be created, and that one moment or one decision, one step forward can change everything forever.